Welcome guys. In the last video, I have provided you some basic definition related to labor economics, and also I have provided a definition about labor markets. In the last video, I told you that labor markets is a mechanism that helps employers and employees to interact in the market with giving level of wages. But let's talk in this video about some key definition and fact within labor market. Understanding this key definition or fact will help you to clearly understand the concept of demand and supply within labor market. So let's start it. What are those key definitions that we have to understand within labor market? The first one, we need to know about the adult working population. Adult working population is consists of peoples who aged more than 16 years old. So this adult working population is the sum of people who are in the labor force and the people who are not in the labor force. For example, if the total number of people which are in the labor force is 32 millions, and the number of people who are not in the labor force is 8 millions. So now, adult working population will be 40 million. Within this definition, what is labor force then? Labor force is the number of people who are employed and who are actively seeking for employment, but now they don't have any job. I mean, unemployed people. If out of this 32 million labor force, if 28 million are already employed and 4 million are seeking for employment but they don't have job yet, so the labor force population or labor force, those people which they are in the labor force will be 32 million. The next definition is labor force participation rate. Labor force participation rate is the fraction of overall adult population who are in the labor force. If overall population is 40 million and 32 million are in the labor force, so now the labor force participation rate will be 0.8 or 80%. Next concept that we need to know the definition is employment rate. Employment rate is the fraction of people who are already employed. The fraction of population who are already employed. We know that the overall population or overall adult working population is 40 million. So now out of this 40 million, 28 million are employed. 28 million over 40 million will be 0.7 or 70%. And most of the time we call employment rate as a employment population ratio. And the next and most important things that we deal more in economics is unemployment rate. Unemployment rate is the fraction of labor force participation who are unemployed. The fraction of labor force people or population who are unemployed. We know that the labor force population is 32 million. Then 4 million are unemployed. So the fraction of 4 and 32 will be 0.125. In percentage, it will be 12.5%. So now, the most important things, this fraction or these number is not fixed or constant over time. They will be changed. So let's move to some facts that we have within labor market. So overall, our adult working population will be divided in labor force and not in the labor force. but there is some interaction between labor force and not in the labor force. There is some movement. Why? Because this labor force and this non-labor force population will not remain the same over time. There is some change, there is some movement between these two group of people. For example, sometimes people who are in the labor force, they choose to get out of the labor force. Get out of the labor force. And those people which they are not in the labor force, they are get in the labor force. So there is a movement between labor force and non-labor force population. And also when labor force population is divided to employed and unemployed, also there is a movement between employed people and unemployed people. Why? Because sometimes those people which are already employed, they may get out of the employment either by quit or lay off. So they will get out of the employed people. And also those people which they are unemployed, they may be re-enter to employed people, or in other words, they may find job. So the contribution of this group of people will not remain the same always. So there is some co-movement between two group of people. There is co-movement between labor force population, not in the labor force population, employed people and unemployed people. And we need to understand these concepts, because those people which they are employed, it means there's a demand for labor force. There's a demand for labor. When the number of employed people increase, it means the demand for labor increase. So if the number of employed people decrease, it means the demand for labor decrease. So this is for today's video. I hope to see you in the next video again.